I still remember that night as if it happened yesterday. We were sitting in his car after a long day. He looked straight at me with that careless smile and said, you're kind of boring. Just like that. One word. Boring. He said I wasn't adventurous, that I wasn't fun enough to match his lifestyle. I laughed nervously in that moment, pretending I didn't care, but deep down, it felt like someone had just stabbed my pride. Do you know that kind of pain when someone reduces everything you are to a single cruel word? If you've ever been judged unfairly, hit the like button so I know I'm not alone. The truth is, I wasn't boring. I was just different. I loved quiet evenings at home, cooking a meal, sitting with family, having real conversations. I believed in stability, loyalty, and building a future together, but he didn't value those things. He wanted noise, attention, and the kind of fun that looks good in pictures but never lasts in real life. Not long after, he left me, and almost immediately he showed off his new girlfriend. She was glamorous, always posting pictures of parties, trips, expensive dinners. He made sure everyone saw how exciting his life had become without me. And yes, it hurt. Every photo felt like a reminder that I wasn't enough. But instead of chasing after him, I made a decision. I would focus on myself. So I poured my energy into my work, into my health, into becoming the best version of me. Slowly, I started to shine. My life wasn't loud, but it was meaningful. I felt proud of myself, even if that old word boring still echoed in my mind from time to time. Years passed, and then I started hearing whispers about him. That perfect relationship he had flaunted, it had collapsed. His so-called fun wife was actually a storm. Constant fights, jealousy, drama. What looked perfect online was pure chaos in reality. Isn't it funny how life reveals the truth sooner or later? If you've ever seen karma play out like this, don't forget to subscribe because I have so many stories just like this one. And then, fate stepped in. We met again at a wedding. I walked into the hall, and there he was. He looked older, tired, like life had drained him. But me? I was glowing, confident, alive. When his eyes met mine, I could see the shock written all over his face. Not long after, I heard the news. He was divorced. And then came the message from him, out of nowhere. Suddenly, the same man who once called me boring was telling me, "You're the kind of woman I should have married from the start." Imagine that. But here's the sweetest part. His kids adore me. They call me mom. They find comfort in the very things he once mocked. My calmness, my care, my stability. Karma has a funny way of working, doesn't it? He used to say I was boring. Now his kids fight over who gets to sit next to me at dinner. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge life could ever give. So tell me, was I ever boring? Or was I exactly what he needed all along? I still remember his words as if they were carved into my memory. We were sitting together one evening, and out of nowhere, he looked at me and said, "You know what your problem is? You're boring." Just like that. No hesitation, no thought about how those words might cut me deep. He laughed a little after saying it, but I didn't laugh. Inside, I felt something break. Because when someone you love reduces you to one cruel word, it's not easy to forget. Maybe he thought I was boring because I didn't like nightclubs or wild trips with no plan. I wasn't the kind of girl who lived for the spotlight. What I loved was simpler, but in my eyes, more real. I loved evenings at home, cooking with my mother, drinking tea with my sisters, listening to my father's stories. I loved the warmth of family, the security of traditions, the dream of building a stable life with someone who valued honor and trust. But to him, those things weren't exciting. He didn't see the beauty in them. He saw me as boring. And not long after, he left me. Just like that. And soon he showed off his new girlfriend, flashy, glamorous, the kind of woman who made noise wherever she went. Social media was full of their pictures, expensive restaurants, late-night parties, exotic trips, and of course, he made sure I saw all of it. He wanted me to know he had upgraded. It hurt, I won't lie. For days, I replayed his words in my head, but then I decided something. I wouldn't let that one word define me. If you've ever been underestimated or called something unfair, hit the like button right now, because you know exactly how I felt. So instead of drowning in sadness, I focused on myself. I worked harder at my job, I took care of my health, I started living for me. My life became calm, stable, and meaningful, and the more I grew, the more I realized I was never boring. I was just different from what he thought he wanted. Years passed, and I started hearing things. His perfect love story, it wasn't so perfect. His wife, the glamorous one, was loud in more ways than one. Fights, jealousy, drama. What looked like fun on Instagram was chaos in real life. And I couldn't help but smile, because isn't it true? Sooner or later, karma comes knocking. And then fate played its hand. We met again at a wedding.
He looked older, tired, as if life had drained him. But me? I was standing tall, confident, glowing with everything I had built for myself. His eyes couldn't hide the shock. Not long after, I heard he was divorced. And then came his message. You're the kind of woman I should have married from the beginning. But here's the sweetest part. His kids adore me. They call me mom. They love my calmness, my warmth, the very things he once mocked. The irony is beautiful, isn't it? He once called me boring. Now his kids fight over who gets to sit next to me at dinner. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge life could ever give. If you felt this story in your heart, don't forget to share it, because maybe someone you know needs to hear that being true to yourself is never boring.
The breakup came faster than I ever imagined. One evening, after days of him being distant and cold, he finally looked at me and said, "Listen, I think we should end this. You're just not the type of woman I see myself with long term." My heart dropped. But before I could even process the words, he added with that same cruel smirk, "You're boring. I need someone exciting." I remember sitting there, frozen. It wasn't just the breakup, it was the insult that cut deeper than anything. In our culture, a woman's value is often tied to how she's seen in public, graceful, attractive, lively. And in that moment, he stripped all of that away from me with one word: boring. I forced a smile, swallowed my pride, and walked away with my dignity intact. But inside, I was shattered. What made it worse was how quickly he replaced me. Just days later, my phone lit up with whispers from friends. "Did you see his new girlfriend?" And then came the pictures. She was everything he thought I wasn't. Glamorous, loud, always dressed to impress. Her social media was filled with selfies at restaurants, parties, beaches. He was right there beside her in every photo, flashing that proud smile as if to say, "See, this is what fun looks like." It was humiliating. Every scroll through my feed felt like a dagger. People would glance at me with pity, some even with judgment, as if to say, "Well, maybe he's right. Maybe she really wasn't enough." That's the thing about our society. People rarely see what happens inside a relationship, but they love to believe what they see on the surface. And the surface was painting me as the quiet, discarded ex, and her as the sparkling new prize. I cried some nights, I won't deny it. But even in those moments, I told myself, stay silent. Let time speak for you. Because deep down, I believed in something we all know, that truth has a way of revealing itself. My heart whispered that one day, the world would see who was truly boring and who was truly valuable. If you've ever been replaced, made to feel small, or judged unfairly because someone wanted something flashier, hit the like button right now because you know how sharp that wound feels. And believe me, this story isn't over. As I watched him flaunt that relationship, I stayed quiet. I didn't fight for him. I didn't try to prove myself. Instead, I decided to build myself, to let my silence and my patience become my answer. And to everyone listening, remember this. Sometimes silence is not weakness. It's the beginning of the sweetest revenge. So keep watching, because what happened next will make you believe in karma more than ever. And if you want to hear how life turned the tables, don't forget to share this story, because someone you know might need this reminder. Appearances may shine, but truth always wins in the end. After he left, I thought the world would end. For weeks, I carried that single word he had thrown at me like a curse. Boring. It echoed in my head every morning when I opened my eyes and every night when I tried to sleep. In our culture, words stick. A woman can spend years building her reputation, her dignity, and her worth, and then one careless comment can crush it. And he had left me with that word to carry. But I made a decision. I would not chase him. I would not beg for his attention, nor would I try to prove him wrong by becoming someone I wasn't. No. Instead, I decided to prove something far more powerful, that the life I had always dreamed of was not boring at all. I threw myself into my work. Day by day, I worked harder, stayed later, learned more. Slowly, I built a career I could be proud of. My boss began to notice my dedication, and soon I was given more responsibility. The respect I earned in the office gave me a new kind of confidence, the kind no man could take away from me. At home, I focused on my health. Early walks in the morning, home-cooked meals, and yes, laughter with my family over dinner. People underestimate those small moments, but they were my anchor. My mother's smile when I helped her in the kitchen, my father's pride when he introduced me to his friends. This is my daughter, the hardworking one. Those moments were worth more than all the fake lights and parties in the world. But make no mistake, it wasn't easy. There were days when I felt the emptiness, when I scrolled through my phone and saw him flaunting his perfect life with her. And in those moments, that word, boring, came back louder. I would whisper to myself, maybe he's right. Maybe I really wasn't enough. Then I would take a deep breath and remind myself, enough for who? Enough for him?
or enough for myself. That shift in thinking saved me. Slowly, I began to see my life differently. My routine wasn't boring, it was peaceful. My evenings weren't empty, they were filled with the people who truly loved me. And my choices weren't small. They were building the foundation of a future no one could laugh at. And let me tell you something, my friends. If you've ever been called boring or too quiet or not enough, hit the like button right now, because I want you to hear me clearly. There is nothing boring about peace. There is nothing boring about loyalty, about building, about being true to yourself. Little by little, I transformed. I became stronger, healthier, and yes, happier. And the irony? My life, the one he once dismissed as dull, became richer and fuller than I ever imagined. Far from boring. But still, somewhere deep inside, that word lingered. And I didn't know it yet. But soon, life itself would bring me face to face with the man who had spoken it. And that's when the real story would begin.
Time passed, and with it, wounds slowly began to heal. I had moved forward with my life, but every now and then, his shadow appeared where I least expected it. A mutual friend would mention his name, or I'd stumble upon his smiling face on social media. And every time, I saw the same picture. Him and his glamorous wife, dressed in matching outfits, dining in expensive places, traveling to exotic locations. To the world, it looked like a fairy tale. To me, it was just another reminder of the word he left me with: boring. But you know how our societies work. Appearances are everything. People whisper, they compare. Some would say, look at him now, mashallah, he really upgraded. And even though I stayed silent, those comments burned deep inside me. Yet I held on to one thought: nothing in this world stays hidden forever. And soon, the cracks began to show. At first, just little things I heard in passing. A friend's cousin who worked near his office said he looked tired, stressed. Another whispered that he had been borrowing money quietly, trying to cover expenses bigger than his income. And then came the louder stories. Arguments with his wife that neighbors could hear through the walls, scenes in public where she shouted at him, jealous rages when she caught him glancing at other women. It turned out their life wasn't the glamorous dream everyone thought. It was chaos, dressed up with filters and smiles for Instagram. And the more I heard, the more I realized he had chosen a firework. Bright, loud, dazzling, but it burned out quickly and left only smoke. Meanwhile, my own life was blossoming. My career was steady, my family proud, my health strong. I was building a foundation that no one could shake. Every morning, I woke up with gratitude instead of stress. Every evening, I sat with family, surrounded by peace instead of shouting. Sometimes I would think to myself, if this is boring, then I'll happily stay boring forever. Do you see the irony? The same man who left me because I wasn't exciting enough was now drowning in excitement he couldn't handle. And me? I was living the calm, steady, fulfilled life he once mocked. If you've ever watched someone who hurt you taste their own medicine, click the like button right now, because you know how bittersweet that moment feels. Still, I didn't celebrate his downfall. No, I simply observed. Life itself was teaching him the lessons I could never explain. And slowly, a quiet satisfaction grew in my heart. Not because he was suffering, but because I was finally free of that word, boring. I could see clearly now, the life I had chosen was not boring at all. It was strong, honorable, and real. But destiny wasn't done with me yet. Our paths would cross again, and this time, the story would turn in a way even I couldn't have imagined. So stay with me, and if you haven't already, share the story, because someone out there needs to be reminded. Glamour fades, but truth never does. Life has a strange way of bringing people back into your path when you least expect it. For me, that moment came on a warm summer evening at a wedding. You know how weddings are in our culture. Grand halls filled with lights, tables overflowing with food, families gathering from near and far, women dressed in their finest dresses, men greeting each other with proud smiles. It's a place where reputations shine, where everyone notices who has changed, who has succeeded, who has fallen behind. I walked into the hall with my cousins that night, wearing a dress that shimmered softly under the lights. Nothing too extravagant, but elegant, respectful, the kind of style my mother always taught me. Dignity first, beauty second. I had grown into myself by then, more confident, more at peace. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, but somehow that's when you impress the most. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. At first, I wasn't sure. His shoulders seemed heavier, his face carried lines of stress that hadn't been there before. And his eyes, they no longer sparkled with arrogance. They looked tired, faded.
But yes, it was him, the same man who once called me boring. For a second, I froze. Memories rushed back all at once. His words, the humiliation, the way he replaced me so quickly. Part of me wanted to turn away, to pretend I hadn't seen him. But another part of me whispered, no, don't hide. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I walked further into the hall, greeting people I knew, smiling, laughing, and that's when it happened. His eyes found me. I could tell from the way he stopped mid-sentence, the way his jaw tightened, that he wasn't prepared to see me like this. I wasn't the quiet, heartbroken girl he left behind. I was a woman who had built herself back up piece by piece until I was whole again. He didn't approach me right away, but I could feel his gaze following me across the room. And you know what? For the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking under his eyes. No, he was the one shrinking under mine. His once perfect wife wasn't by his side. People whispered she hadn't come. Some said they had separated. Others hinted at bigger problems. Either way, he stood there alone, watching me glow in a way he had never imagined. And let me tell you, my friends, that moment was worth every tear I had cried. If you've ever walked into a room and seen the one who hurt you realize what they lost, hit the like button right now, because you know how powerful that silence feels. The wedding continued with music, laughter, and dancing, but I barely noticed. I had already won without saying a word. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's simply walking into the room, standing tall, and letting your presence speak for itself. But that night was only the beginning, because soon he would try to come back into my life. And what happened next, I promise will leave you speechless. So don't forget to share this story and subscribe if you want to hear how karma delivered its final, unforgettable twist.
It didn't take long after that wedding for the whispers to spread. You know how our communities are. News travels faster than light. One aunt hears something, she tells her neighbor, and within days, everyone knows. And this time, the whispers were about him. Did you hear? They separated. No, they're already divorced. Wella, I heard she left the house with the kids after a huge fight. At first, I didn't believe it. This was the man who once flaunted his perfect life to the world, the one who used to post daily pictures with his wife as if to prove to everyone that he had chosen better. And now, that fairy tale had crumbled into dust. A part of me felt a strange mix of emotions. I won't lie, there was satisfaction. Not because I wanted to see him fail, but because life itself had spoken the truth I had been too wounded to say. The glamorous, exciting life he traded me for was nothing but a show. But another part of me felt pity. Because no matter what he did to me, divorce is never easy, especially in our culture. It carries weight, shame, endless questions from family, judgment from society. And then one evening, out of nowhere, my phone lit up. A message from him. I stared at the screen, my heart racing, my hands frozen. What could he possibly want after all this time? I opened it. The words were simple but heavy. I've been thinking about you. You're the kind of woman I should have married from the start. I can't describe the rush of emotions that hit me in that moment. Anger, shock, a strange kind of laughter even. This was the same man who once looked me in the eye and called me boring. The same man who walked away without hesitation. And now, after life humbled him, he suddenly realized my worth? He didn't stop at one message. No. Calls began to follow, long paragraphs where he confessed his regrets. He told me he had been blind, that I was the only woman who truly cared for him, that his children deserved someone like me in their lives. He tried to paint himself as a changed man, humbled by life's lessons. And I have to admit, there was a moment, just a small one, where my heart softened. After all, we are human. We want to believe people can change. But then I remembered those nights I cried, the humiliation I endured, the strength it took me to rebuild myself. And I thought, why now? Why only after you've lost everything? My friends, if you've ever had someone come crawling back after they once broke you, hit the like button right now because you know the mix of emotions that moment brings. I didn't answer him right away. No, I let him wait, because sometimes silence is the strongest response. And deep inside, I knew the story wasn't over. He had come back into my life, yes, but this time the power wasn't his anymore. It was mine. And what happened next would be karma in its sweetest form. So don't forget to share the story and subscribe if you want to hear how life turned the tables completely in my favor. At first, I ignored his calls. Days passed, and I thought maybe he would give up. But he didn't. Every message carried more desperation, more pleading. He wasn't the arrogant man I once knew. No, life had stripped him of that pride. And maybe that's why, against all logic, I finally agreed to see him. When we sat face to face after all those years, it felt surreal. His eyes were softer, his voice less sharp. He spoke slowly, as if every word weighed heavy on his tongue. I was wrong.
I was blind. I hurt you and I destroyed myself in the process. Part of me wanted to laugh, another part wanted to cry. But I kept my composure. I had grown stronger since the last time we met. This time, I wasn't the woman begging for his love. I was the one in control. Our meetings became more frequent, not because I trusted him, no. Trust once broken is not easily mended, but because I was curious. Curious to see how far life had changed him. And then one afternoon, he introduced me to his children. I'll never forget that moment. Two little faces looked up at me with wide eyes, unsure, shy, but innocent. I smiled and instantly their walls began to crumble. We talked, we laughed, I listened to their stories, simple, silly things that children love to share. And slowly, without even realizing it, I began to feel something I hadn't expected: affection. They started asking for me. When I visited, their faces lit up. They'd run to me, calling out in their sweet voices, fighting over who would sit closer. And then one day, the youngest looked at me and whispered a word that made my heart stop. Mama. I froze. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. That word carried so much weight. I wasn't their mother, but in their eyes, I was someone who gave them warmth, patience, and care, things they longed for after the chaos of their parents' separation. And let me tell you something, my dear listeners, when a child chooses you, when they give you that kind of love, not blood, it's different. It's pure. It's healing. If you've ever had a child call you mama or baba out of love, not blood, you'll understand what I mean. And if you do, hit that like button right now, because you know how powerful that moment feels. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who once said I was too simple, too ordinary, now watched as his own children clung to me, adored me, respected me. In a way, it was life's sweetest revenge. Not through anger or shouting, but with quiet, undeniable truth. I was everything he once claimed I wasn't. And deep inside, I knew this story was only getting more interesting, because life has a way of giving you back your dignity, not with force, but with moments like these, when even the smallest voices call you by the highest name. So don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because what came next was the moment justice finally arrived.
He used to say I was boring, that I lacked excitement, that my life was too plain. His words would cut deep, like a blade sharpened by arrogance. Back then, I cried alone at night, wondering if I truly wasn't enough. But here we were, years later, sitting across from each other. His face carried lines of regret, his shoulders slumped under the weight of mistakes. And the irony? The very things he once mocked, my stability, my patience, my quiet strength, were now the qualities he desperately clung to. He no longer chased fun or adventure. He no longer cared about the glittering lies of the world. He craved peace. And in front of him, I was living proof that peace was never about money, beauty, or status. It was about heart, about values, about being real. Sometimes, when his children laughed beside me, I would catch him watching in silence. His eyes would soften, almost pleading, as if asking me a question he couldn't say out loud. Why couldn't I see this before? And to my dear listeners, haven't we all faced moments like this, when someone only realizes your worth after they've lost you? If you've ever felt that sting, then you know how sweet justice tastes when life proves you were always enough. And if this story touches you, don't forget to like it, because your support keeps these stories alive. One evening, his daughter hugged me tightly and said, "You're the only one who listens to me." Her words pierced through me. A child's honesty has no filter. She wasn't praising me, she was simply telling her truth, and her truth revealed everything her father had failed to give. That night, I went home smiling, not out of pride, but out of relief. Relief that I no longer needed his validation. I had become a source of love and respect, not by changing myself, but by being exactly who I was. And here's where karma revealed itself in its most poetic form. The man who once left me searching for my worth now sat in front of me searching for his. The man who abandoned me for more exciting now envied the calmness I carried. The man who once thought I was ordinary watched his own children find in me the extraordinary he could never see. I realized then I didn't need revenge in the loud, destructive way. My revenge was simple, elegant, and silent. To thrive, to be happy, to be loved in ways he couldn't imagine. And that is why, my friends, I say this with all honesty. Never doubt yourself because of someone's temporary blindness. Your worth is not measured by their vision. Life has its own way of showing the truth. Sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms or loud confrontations. It comes in quiet moments when the very person who underestimated you is forced to admit without words that you were always enough.
So share this story with someone who needs strength today and subscribe because more stories of justice, faith, and resilience are coming. And remember, in the end, the sweetest revenge is living a life that proves them wrong.
He used to look me in the eye and say with a smirk, "You're boring. You'll never bring excitement into my life." Those words, years ago, felt like daggers. I remember going to bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if he was right. Was I really that dull? Did my quiet way of living make me less worthy of love? But here's the funny twist life served on a golden plate. Today, his children argue over who gets to sit next to me at the dinner table. "No, I want to sit beside Auntie," one of them shouts, while the other clings to my arm. And in that chaos, I can't help but laugh. The same man who once called me boring now watches as his own children fight just to be close to me. Tell me, isn't that poetic justice? If you've ever been underestimated or made to feel not enough, you'll understand this moment. And if you do, give this story a like because maybe someone out there needs to hear that their worth will one day shine without them having to prove a thing. You see, in our culture, honor isn't just about titles, money, or showing off. Honor is in the way people respect you, the way children trust you, the way your presence brings peace instead of chaos. And that's exactly what life revealed here. At family gatherings, when the table is full of food, steaming rice with lamb, fresh salads, and trays of sweets, it isn't him the kids run to. It isn't him they lean on when they're upset. No, they come to me. They whisper their secrets, they laugh at my jokes, and they look at me with the kind of admiration that can't be faked. And I see him sometimes, sitting quietly in the corner, his eyes lowered, perhaps remembering the days he thought I wasn't enough, perhaps realizing that the person he left behind had more light than he could ever see. One night, after dinner, when the kids had finally fallen asleep, he muttered softly, not to me, but almost to himself, "I was blind." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence between us carried more weight than any words could. And that's the beauty of it all, my friends. Revenge doesn't always come through anger or loud victories. Sometimes it comes with a soft laugh at a dinner table, with children clinging to your arms, with peace in your heart, while the other sits heavy with regret. So if this story touched something in your heart, share it. Because maybe someone in your circle needs to be reminded, never doubt your worth, even if someone fails to see it. And don't forget to subscribe because there are many more stories like this. Stories where life itself delivers justice in ways sharper than any blade. In the end, I realized something simple yet powerful. I never needed to fight to prove my value. I just had to live, to be myself. And life, or call it karma, took care of the rest.